Question number 1. What the question number 1 says, it says if a substance gains the oxygen in a reaction, it has been oxidized. If it loses oxygen, it has been reduced. So it gives you the definition for the oxidation reduction based on the transfer of the oxygen. It says oxidation and reduction always take place together. So if one substance is oxidized, another is reduced. So it also emphasizes that you have oxidation and reduction together. So if you identified which species is oxidized, 100%, the other species is reduced. So we can identify the species which undergoes oxidation and the species which undergoes reduction. Okay, part A says first see if you can write a word equation for each redox reaction from A to the F below. So for these reactions that you have here. And part B says, then using the idea above, it means based on the transfer of the oxygen, say which substance is being oxidized and which is being reduced in each reaction. Okay, so we do these questions one by one for each one of them. Let's start from part A. So for part A, you can see, what do you have at the left side? You have calcium reacts with oxygen. What it gives you? CaO. What is CaO?
Is it calcium oxide?
Exactly, it's calcium oxide. Okay, it's ionic compound. You have a metal Ca and you have a non-metal, so they form an ionic compound. So the word equation for this part A is calcium reacts with oxygen, gives us calcium oxide. Okay, so we've done part A. For part B, it says identify the oxidized and reduced species. So what happens to the calcium here? It has gained the oxygen. So it means the calcium is oxidized. So when you identify the species which is oxidized, the other species is reduced. Okay, so this is the part B of the question. So calcium is oxidized, oxygen is reduced. Any question here? If you don't have question, let's move on to part B. So first, let's determine the word equation for that one. What is CO?
Carbon monoxide?
Exactly. This is molecular compound. Okay, it's a covalent compound. So this is carbon monoxide reacts with oxygen, gives you, that is CO2?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Exactly. Okay, so let's determine what happens to the carbon monoxide. What happened to the carbon monoxide here? Is it gained the electron or lost the electron?
It gained
Yeah,
no,
it had one oxygen. On the other side, it has two oxygen. So this species is
oxidized.
oxidized. So obviously the oxygen is reduced. So we identify the species which is oxidized and the species which is reduced. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Part C. We have CH4 reacts with O2, gives you CO2 and H2O. Okay, what was CH4?
Methane.
Exactly. CH4, it has common name. Okay, so this one. Methane reacts with oxygen, gives you CO2, carbon dioxide, and water. So methane reacts with oxygen, gives you carbon dioxide and the water. Okay, so let's see what happens to the methane here. What happened to that?
It's lost hydrogen and get oxygen.
Exactly, it lost hydrogen and gained hydrogen. Both of these emphasize that the methane is oxidized, because oxidation is gaining of oxygen and losing hydrogen. So this one is oxidized, so the O2 in this reaction is reduced. Okay, So as you can see here, when we are talking about the species which undergoes oxidation and the species which undergoes the reduction, we are looking at the left side of the equation. So we are talking about the reactants, not about the products. So when they ask you to identify the species which is oxidized and the species which is reduced, you must look at the reactant and check which one has lost the electron or gained the electron, or if it's based on the transfer of oxygen, hydrogen, which one gained the oxygen, which one has lost the oxygen, and so on. Let's move on to part D. You have CuO plus C gives you Cu and CO2. Okay, what is CuO?
Copper oxide.
Exactly. This is ionic compound. It's copper oxide. Okay. But we have two charge for the copper ion. Which one is this one?
It's copper 2.
Exactly. It's copper 2. So it was Cu2 plus and oxide was O2 minus. So they changed the charge and then it's simplified. So it becomes CuO. Okay. So for this equation, copper oxide is reacted with carbon, gives you the copper and carbon dioxide. Okay, so what happened to the copper oxide?
It lost oxygen.
Exactly, so it is reduced. And what happened to the carbon? It has gained oxygen, so it is oxidized. So we identify the species which is reduced and the species which is oxidized. Okay, so let's move on to the next equation, part E. Okay, it says 2Fe. Let me delete this part. Okay, so we have 2Fe react with 3O2 gives you Fe2O3. So at the left side, Fe is iron, reacts with oxygen. What is Fe2O3? What's the name of that? It is iron oxide, yeah? It is iron oxide, but which iron?
Iron trioxide.
Exactly, it's iron 3. So the 3 charge for the iron went here for oxygen. So it's iron 3 oxide. So iron reacts with oxygen, gives you iron 3 oxide. So let's see what happens to the iron. Iron has gained the oxygen, so it is oxidized. And what happens to the oxygen? It's reduced, because when we identify the species which is oxidized, the next species is obviously reduced. Okay, and for the last equation, Fe2O3, we have just said it's iron trioxide. So iron trioxide reacts with carbon monoxide, gives you iron and carbon dioxide. Okay, so what happens to the iron trioxide here?
It lost oxygen.
Exactly, so it is reduced, and the carbon monoxide becomes carbon dioxide. It's gained the oxygen. This one is oxidized.